Why was Chevy so pissed?
He made some remarks that were deemed to be racist, a comment that he made, and I think that was kind of it.
Why was Chevy that upset? He said things which were considered racist. One statement he made was enough to create controversy, and that in effect was the start of the trouble. Chevy Chase might have been a comedy icon in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, he made enemies like few people in Hollywood. There were at least 10 actors who just could not abide working with him, and some still do decades later. The tales are outrageous, the put-down sharp, and the tension explosive. Here are the top 10 celebrities who openly hated Chevy Chase. Kevin Smith. By the late 1990s, director Kevin Smith was surfing the cult wave of Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy. With his quick wit and obsession with popular culture, Smith had set his sights on rebooting the Fletch film franchise, originally featuring Chevy Chase as the wisecracking reporter Irwin Fletcher. On paper, it was a match made in heaven. Smith's edgy contemporary sensibility colliding with Chase's established persona. But then came a disastrous encounter that ended the project and any chance of collaboration. In 1997, Smith set up a lunch meeting with Chase to talk about a remake. The concept was for Smith to write and direct, potentially with a young actor such as Jason Lee starring. Before considering anything, Smith wished to hear from Chase himself, the individual who had made Fletch a comedy legend. Instead of an artistic dialogue, however, Smith received a masterclass in Hollywood egotism. Smith afterwards described how lunch devolved into the realm of fantasy. Instead of talking about direction or script, Chase supposedly spent most of the time boasting about how great he was, including making outrageous statements. At one point, he reportedly informed Smith that he had come up with everything humorous in the history books, not only in entertainment, but in the entire cosmos. The egotism was overwhelming. Smith, accustomed to offbeat personalities, was amazed at the sheer magnitude of ego present. What was supposed to be a promising partnership became a draining lesson in humility for Smith. Chase dominated the discussion, informing everyone in no uncertain terms that any interpretation of Fletch would feature him and him alone. Following the meeting, Smith resolved quietly not to pursue Chase. He recounted the tale in interviews, detailing his combination of surprise and irritation. Chase, hearing Smith's account, questioned the director's integrity, asserting the meeting had been misrepresented. Rather than considering his own actions, Chase faulted Smith for foiling the project and ruining his reputation. Lorne Michaels. During Saturday Night Live's peak in the mid-1970s, no connection was tighter than that of creator Lorne Michaels and breakout star Chevy Chase. They weren't only co-workers, they were friends, teaming together to transform American comedy. But that camaraderie disintegrated when Chase did something that shocked everyone at SNL. In the height of his popularity, Chase suddenly departed the show after just one season. Although his exit was technically within the terms of his contract, it was the way that hurt. He gave no notice, no grace, and no official apology to his colleagues. Instead, he caught them off guard with his departure and his switch to NBC primetime specials. The repercussions were both personal and professional. His exit also broke up his partnership with Bernie Brillstein, the agent who represented both Chase and Michaels. Not only did Chase leave SNL, but she also cut her ties with Brillstein and signed with competing agency William Morris. To some, this appeared both arrogant and intentional. The betrayal did not stop with executives. Writers and staff members felt betrayed. One of the writers later blearily referred to Chase as a scumbag, charging him with dishonesty and deceit in how he arranged his departure. Original staff writer Tom Davis inquired of Chase why he would be leaving this pioneering show so early. Chase had a straightforward response. Money, plenty of it. That one confession sealed what many had already suspected. Fame and success were more important to Chase than friendship or teamwork. Though both Michaels and Chase eventually became successful, their friendship never fully healed. The wounds inflicted by Chase's sudden departure took years to heal, a reminder of how quickly fame can turn to bitterness. Johnny Carson. During the heyday of late-night TV, no position was more sought after than host of The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson was the king, his legend constructed on charm, wit, and timing. In the 1980s, there were whispers that Chevy Chase might be the one to take over. Whispers that raised eyebrows throughout the business, including Carson's. Chase, as infamous for being obstreperous as for being witty, waved the gossip away in his characteristic smug fashion. In an interview with New York Magazine, he stated that he couldn't envision spending years stuck doing interviews with TV personalities, suggesting the work was demeaning. His statement dismissed the job, not only but also Carson's career. Carson, typically reserved, retaliated with untypical venom. Chevy couldn't ad-lib a fart after a baked bean dinner. The blow, elegantly precise, rippled instantly through Hollywood. The reality was plain. Chase excelled at sketch comedy, but was missing the modesty and persistence late night demanded. His conceit pushed him further away, making him never a credible contender for Carson's seat. Donald Glover. On the set of Community, Chevy Chase's dynamic with Donald Glover revealed a disgusting combination of ego, racism, and insecurity. Glover, who played Troy Barnes, remembered how Chase told racially insensitive jokes in between filming, jokes so barbed that they often bordered on attempts to bring him down. He once told him that people only found him funny because he was black. This was not a one-time remark. It was an example of a trend. Show creator Dan Harmon thought the action was jealousy-driven. Chase saw Glover's growing talent and popularity and resented being upstaged by someone younger and more multi-talented. Glover subsequently mused that Chase appeared to be a man in denial of his waning importance. Glover did not villainize him, but instead viewed him as a man afraid of aging and obsolescence. Chase was not a monster in Glover's opinion, but rather an artifact plagued by insecurity. Ironically, while Glover's career thrived, Chase glided into obscurity, resurfacing only in forgettable low-budget movies. The king of comedy of the 70s and 80s had reduced himself to an industry pariah, brought low not by scandal or addiction, but by his own bitterness. Howard Stern. Howard Stern made a career out of attacking arrogance and hypocrisy, and when Chevy Chase was on his program, the outcome was merciless. Figuring on some light-natured razzying, Chase found instead a merciless dismantling of his reputation. Stern ridiculed him into decline, pointing out how Chase's arrogance had blown through goodwill with colleagues and audiences. Chase retorted in disdain, but Stern remained unfazed, putting Chase on display as his own worst enemy. In contrast to hush-hush Hollywood whispers, Stern said what most thought out loud. For Chase, it was another reminder of just how much his star had dimmed. Dan Harmon. Few behind-the-scenes battles were more incendiary than the one between Chevy Chase and Dan Harmon, the showrunner behind Community. What started as a promising partnership on NBC's offbeat sitcom soon turned into one of the most notorious actor-showrunner wars in recent TV history. At the heart of their conflict was a poisonous combination of Chase's ego and Harmon's unyielding vision. Chase, the hapless but prejudiced Pierce Hawthorne, frequently disagreed with Harmon about scripts, jokes, and direction. Chase supposedly despised how his character was developed, convinced it made him appear silly instead of funny. But rather than speak to his complaints professionally, Chase often replied with name-calling, tantrums, and even racist slurs at his fellow cast members. The tension boiled over in 2012 when Harmon had had enough of Chase's on-set antics and made their dispute public in a shock move in Tinseltown. When Chase bailed on an early rap party, Harmon played a string of hostile voicemails Chase had left him over the loudspeakers for everyone in the cast and crew to hear. They were replete with profanity, insults, and venomous criticisms of Harmon's writing and management. What could have been a private argument instantly turned into a public scandal, shaming Chase and solidifying their mutual disdain. The fallout was instant. NBC, already cautious of Harmon's unpredictable behavior and history of being a difficult person himself, terminated Harmon from Community after season 3. Chase did not fare as well. His already ruined reputation was dragged further down with the leaked feud. While Harmon was subsequently rehired, Chase's position on the show was slowly phased out until he eventually left permanently in season 4. For Harmon, the beef with Chase was a Hollywood cautionary tale of colliding egos. For Chase, it was just another scorched bridge on a career full of them. What could have been a late career resurgence on a favorite sitcom instead was just another installment in the epic tale of how Chevy Chase, one-time comedy royalty, would end up being one of the least popular men in showbiz. Bill Murray. Of all the rivalries in Chevy Chase's checkered, messy career, perhaps none is so legendary as his falling out with fellow Saturday Night Live veteran Bill Murray. Their feud is the stuff of comedy lore, not forged out of slighting words, but out of explosive egos that simply couldn't be near one another. When Chase, who had quit SNL after its initial season to make it big in movies, came back to host in 1978, tensions were already running high. The cast members begrudged him for quitting the show so soon, and none more so than Murray, who had taken his place. Chase, whose smugness was notorious, behaved like a conquering hero, while Murray seethed at what he perceived as arrogance and disrespect for the cast. The animosity simmered all week until it at last came to the boil a mere few minutes prior to the broadcast. By eyewitness reports, Chase and Murray traded vicious put-downs backstage, each attacking the jugular. Murray had allegedly taunted Chase about his failed marriage when Chase struck back with insults regarding Murray's appearance and charisma. The exchange of words led to a brawl, with the two men throwing punches until they were separated by cast and crew. What makes the battle legendary isn't the sight of two comedy titans fighting in private behind the scenes of live television. It's the way so perfectly it captured the difference between them. Murray, tough, quick-witted, and fiercely protective of his co-stars. Chase, distant, arrogant, and seemingly oblivious to how far he had driven his co-stars away. The confrontation wasn't personal, it was symbolic, a battle between two vastly different visions of what camaraderie and comedy should be. Both men have minimized the confrontation in the years since, characterizing it as an early burst of egos. Yet the anger endured for decades. While Murray's star continued to shine with iconic turns in Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, and Lost in Translation, Chase's stock continued to plummet, fueled by tales of arrogance and antagonism. The altercation is a cautionary tale of how power egos and unresolved anger can make former partners adversaries overnight. For Chase, the fight with Murray was merely one more item on his extensive list of grudges, but an important one because Murray, unlike so many of his former adversaries, went on to become one of Hollywood's most admired and well-liked citizens. Chase, on the other hand, became as well known for his brawls as for his movies. Ultimately, the 1978 backstage fight wasn't merely a fight. It was a turning point, one that presaged the stormy career Chase would weather in the years ahead. Conclusion: Chevy Chase's career is a paradox. On the one hand, he was a pioneering comedian whose timing, delivery, and physical comedy defined a generation. His legacy on SNL and in movies such as National Lampoon's Vacation